I would just like to say that there is hope, that things can always get better. I believe that's something that's available for every one of us. And I would just hope that people would at least never give up, like just keep seeking because it could be closer than one might think. I think if I can do it, certainly anybody can do it because I didn't think it was possible, to go a couple of days without acting out, let alone years now. I think the most important thing for me is humility, just to, remind myself every day that I have this affliction, this disease, and there's something in me that will ruin my life if I let it. It just is the way it is.
You're listening to the Sex Addicts Recovery Podcast, a place for sex addicts to share their experiences of recovery, to help break the stigma, myths, and misconceptions of sex addiction. This podcast may contain topics of sexuality, sexual trauma, dysfunction, or other things that may be triggering, so listener discretion is advised. Hello, and welcome to the Sex Addicts Recovery Podcast. My name is Jason, I'm a sex addict, and I am your podcast host. What's going on, everyone? Welcome to episode 195 of the Sex Addicts Recovery Podcast. This week, I'm happy to be sharing a conversation that I had with listener Nathan V, who sent in an email way back at the end of January, and I believe that I read it on the podcast maybe in February or March, and we finally had the chance to record in June. One of the things that stood out for me in Nathan's email is his occupation as a death doula and also his interest in music, and we did talk about both of those in this conversation. We also got to talk about Buddhism. So for anyone who is unaware, a death doula is a non-medical professional who provides holistic, emotional, spiritual, and practical support to dying individuals and their families. They complement traditional medical care and hospice by helping navigate the personal and logistical aspects of the dying process. One of my friends in program who has been on the podcast has worked in hospice, and it's interesting to hear kind of the difference between a death doula and working in hospice, which is much more of the medical side, but that did come up in our conversation. And so I wanted to pick out a reading that had to do with death and how we view it in terms of our addiction and our fears. So this can be found in Answers in the Heart on July 2nd. And it starts off with the quote, "The fear of death is only a result of an unfulfilled life." Franz Kafka. Many of us think of death in the abstract, as a fact rather than a reality. We know that everything passes and that we are bound to die, but rarely allow ourselves to accept the reality of dying and being dead. Perhaps our acting out is a way of avoiding the reality of death. It may be that we can only think of sex as a new beginning, a false sense of perpetual renewal, even a kind of rebirth. Especially in fantasy and maybe in our relationships, we are always falling in love all over again. Always young, always beginning again, always keeping our options open, never settling into the contentment of a commitment. As we begin to mature in our recovery, we can learn to integrate our thinking and feelings about death into our feelings about our sexuality and our daily lives. We can sense death as an integral part of life, not just as an abstract finality. This can become part of our program, part of the process of learning to experience reality in all its stunning diversity. Life can become more precious as we realize that we must leave it. And the meditation, I am discovering how to explore my feelings about death and integrate them into my process of recovery. Yeah, so I really enjoyed this reading. And as I talk about in our conversation, one of my friends who is in the mortuary business was on a documentary talking about how as a society, we don't really confront death because we have lots of fears and things coming up around it. And I did want to preface that this entire conversation is not all about death, but we do cover the subject and thought it would be an awesome thing to do this reading at the beginning. I also do have some music at the end that is around the same subject, but we also got into the art of making playlists. And so we had a wonderful conversation around that, and I will be sharing some music that we talked about and some music from both of our playlists. I did have some feedback to share that I will be doing at the end of this episode as well. Before turning it over to our conversation, I did want to mention that when we recorded this, it was the day after I went to a concert, and I was yelling and screaming, and so my voice was really feeling it. You can hear that my voice sounds a little bit deeper, a little bit more scratchy, but I do talk about that at the very end of the conversation. Didn't address it at the beginning, so in case my voice sounds different, that is why. But I had such a wonderful time talking with Nathan, and I am now ready to turn it over to that conversation. Here it is. I hope you enjoy it. We are happy to have Nathan here on the podcast. Nathan emailed us a little while ago, and I remember reading it on a podcast episode and talking about your passion for music, which we'll get to in a little bit, as well as your occupation, which really interests me, and we'll get to that as well. So welcome to the show, Nathan.
Thanks. Grateful to be here. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. I usually start off the episode with talking about the 3 circles. Are you comfortable sharing what is in your inner, middle, and outer circle?
Yeah. So for me, my inner circle behaviors right now are dating apps, porn, masturbation, cheating, masturbation in isolation specifically. Then let's see what else, like consumption of any kind of drugs or alcohol. Also, I include that. So that would also be like sex while under the influence of any drugs or alcohol. For me, including caffeine. And also for me, overeating is another one. So that's another thing that I abstain from. And yeah, I think those are the big inner circle ones. Yep.
Okay. How about middle circle?
So middle, I think for me, middle circle is, I think it's a little bit less defined at this point, but I think it's a lot of I think like fear-based rumination, just kind of like sitting in it, instead of doing something proactive to try to help myself out of it, but maybe just like self-pity or sitting in my anxiety for too long or putting off responsibilities, which I don't do too often, but sometimes I have a tendency to get, I would say like I get a vagueness about certain things, like maybe time or responsibilities. And I think that for me is like a warning sign, a middle circle behavior. And, controlling, resentment, mostly just emotional states. Yeah. I don't think I really have a lot in terms of behaviors specifically, but more like emotional states. Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of mine to begin with were more actionable things. For me, staying up after midnight, not taking care of hygiene and things like that. But I forget when it was. Yeah, I think it was 2021. We had a group going through the steps and starting off a lot of newcomers with their circles. And I looked at my circles and I added in a lot of thoughts, feelings, and things like anxiety and fears and things. I've been through the steps a few times and really noticed that those feelings, the low self-esteem, negative self-talk, those were warning signs for me. And I hadn't really defined those the first time I went through defining my circles and starting on the steps. And so having that opportunity to revisit those, it's like, oh yeah, these mental states are a really good thing to add into the middle circle.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
And how about outer circle?
Yeah. So I thankfully have a pretty big outer circle. Some of the things that I love to do, it's pretty much, I would say my outer circle is just doing things that I love to do, things that make me happy, things that bring me joy, things that I'm curious about. And I think when I started recovery, well, when I got sober a little over 3 years and 2 months ago, I just started to do whatever I was interested in. I didn't mind doing it alone. I didn't mind just taking classes, just anything that interested me, I would just go do it. So like for me, right now, it consists of a lot of, let's say, like yoga, movement, exercise. I love, just going to the sauna and sitting in the sauna and
nice.
Also sitting in a hot tub, just kind of relaxing and spending time with my partner and being in nature, bird watching, let's see what else. Reading,
Hmm.
writing, music, playing music, listening to music, doing the steps, doing step work, doing recovery work, being of service, doing my death work that, the end of life work that I do.
Hmm.
Um, and like, learning about that more and like continuing to grow in that field. I think just like growing in work in general is part of my outer circle. Yeah, going to bed early, eating well, sleeping well, taking care of my mental health issues that I have as well, like in addition to addiction, like OCD and anxiety and
Hmm.
depression. So like I take meds for that stuff and that helps me a lot. So just staying on top of that, family, travel, meetings, it's just pretty robust, thankfully. I don't ever really find myself bored or without like things that I want to do,
Yeah. Yeah, I was going to
Plan.
say, having so many things in the outer circle leads you not to be bored and to have something to do to occupy your time. And so that's great. I have had like a sponsee that had like three things in their
Mhm.
outer circle. And it's like, you can't do a couple of those late at night. So one was, he's a drummer and just playing the drums. It's like, yeah, you can't really do that in the middle of the night. It isn't going to disturb a lot of people. So let's think of
Right.
some other things that we can put in your outer circle. So
Yeah, definitely. Oh, and another big one, I guess I forgot to mention too, is just having a regular prayer and meditation practice. And
oh,
for me,
nice.
I'll go to a Buddhist meditation center once a week at least and practice that. So that's part of my spiritual practice is practicing Buddhism.
Nice.
And I'd also say healthy sexuality too. Yeah, like learning to understand healthy sexuality. Very
Hmm.
important. Hmm.
Awesome. Awesome. Before we started recording, you had mentioned that you were multiply addicted and other programs. I do want to get to your story. And if you want to talk about the other programs and how that unfolds naturally, that's fine. Or if you want to talk about those programs now, or I'll leave that up to you.
Yeah, I think I could just wrap it up into my story because
All
I
right.
came to SAA by way of other programs. So
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
it makes sense. Yeah, I can just wrap it up in there. So I guess my story is I have a affliction of addiction,
mm-hmm.
which I've had since a very, very young age. I don't want to get too much into my family life, but just I grew up with a pretty rough childhood. It was family, it was school, it was the religion I was raised in, it was bullies at school, things like that. I just didn't really have any place in the world where I really felt safe or secure or loved, really, even. So I turned to other things to fulfill that void at a really young age. And I started with food was probably my first one because it was around and I found that consuming sugar and overeating and stuff
Mm-hmm.
would really numb me, would numb my feelings and I would just kind of check out and I would just watch TV and overeat. And then that led to like, I'd get put on diets because I was gaining a lot of weight as a kid. And then I'd, end up sneaking a lot of food. And there was just a lot of shame and like secretiveness and stuff wrapped up in the food addiction stuff. Cause I think also it was sort of, it seemed like my family was aware of it, but they didn't really understand what was happening. But
Mm-hmm.
they kind of like picked on me because of it,
Yeah. Yeah.
rather than help or support. They sort of picked on me about it. And then, I also discovered porn at a super young age from a family member. And I remember pretty much right away from the beginning, just I was super young. I don't even know, maybe 8, 9 years old, something like that. And
Mm-hmm.
discovering porn. And at first I was repulsed by it. It scared me, it freaked me out. But then I just kept coming back to it. I kept coming back to it over and over and I couldn't stop
Yeah.
looking. Also, at that time, I started masturbating. And, for me, it was really compulsive right from the beginning, like, 8 times a day, just like really
Wow.
compulsive,
Yeah.
from a super young age whenever I first started doing that. So, yeah, like the disease has been there in me for my whole life, pretty much. And I eventually also started using drugs at a really young age. I think I was about 13 when I started smoking pot, and then I had drank a little bit before that. And then,
Mm-hmm.
but I remember definitely when I was, I think, 15 or something like that, or 16, I got really drunk for the first time. And I just felt like this is what I've been looking for, for my whole life. Like I felt like I wasn't me, I wasn't the nervous, scared, like fearful, anxious person that I had kind of always was, I was able to kind of be what I felt was free, and
Mm-hmm.
uninhibited. And I was able to have fun and kind of let go and stuff. So for whatever reason, at that time, I didn't really get hooked onto alcohol. though I loved it from that one experience, but I didn't really start drinking heavily until I was like 20. And then, I think at the same time, my sex addiction really ramped up. So I think, it kind of in hindsight, it's like they definitely work together, So
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
drinking allowed me to be uninhibited so that I could have, like casual sex or hook up with people, do things that I was ordinarily too scared to do, So alcohol really fueled that for me. And I think for me, like the kind of the deepest wound, I guess, is just like that is like the shame, is like the feeling that I'm not okay as I am, that I'm not lovable as I am, that I'm not good enough as I am. That's like the deepest wound for me. And I think that's where this all this comes from, And, I used alcohol, drugs, sex, food, money, and other people, like specifically just like other people was probably my biggest thing, And I used that via sex addiction a lot in my life. Well, I'll say this too. When I was 20 years old, I was seeing a therapist because I was also a very unhappy person. I was
Hmm.
very, I would say most of the time I didn't want to live. I felt, I don't know if I would say I felt actively suicidal, but I didn't want to live. And there were definitely points when I did feel suicidal. But mostly I just was like, I felt miserable all the time. I didn't want to live. And I was seeing a therapist because of this. I feel like maybe this planted the seeds for me to come to the program once I got to a point where I was ready to try something new.
Yeah. Yeah.
So he told me after a few sessions that he didn't think, he said, I think you're an addict and you're alcoholic, and I don't think there's anything I can do for you unless you get help and like start AA or something. And but I think he said specifically, unless you start AA. And I wasn't interested at that point. I didn't believe him. I didn't think I was an addict. I didn't think I had a problem.
Hmm.
So I just stopped seeing him. But I think because of that, when I did start looking for meetings, which I guess would be 11 years ago now. So I just turned 40 recently. And I think I hit my first meeting when I was like 29. And,
Hmm. Hmm.
so all through that time, 20 to 29, it was just, it was kind of a whack-a-mole with my addictions. It was, I would overeat and gain a bunch of weight. Then I'd start drinking again and like just basically live on alcohol and lose a bunch of weight. And then I'd be hooking up with people and, then I'd end up in a relationship and then it would go really bad and we break up. And then, just the cycle, like
Hmm.
that was kind of my pattern, just ending up in these bad relationships because of substance abuse usually, So I think, yeah, it fueled my sex addiction. And I think for me, it was like that feeling that I was wanted by someone or I was, needed by someone.
Yeah. Yeah.
So powerful, it's just so powerful. Yeah. I think especially too, because like I said, I was like an anxious, shy kid. And as a younger kid, I was like, I don't know, I was chubby and like girls didn't like me, And then as I got to high school, I lost a bunch of weight and because I was started starving myself and then girls started to notice me. And I think that for me, it was like, it was such a big hit. It was just that attention.
Yeah.
There's nothing like it. But I was in a relationship that was failing because of my addictions, just my whack-a-mole with addictions when I was 29. And I think I started to suspect that there was something not right. I just started to feel like like it can't be this way. Like I shouldn't be this unhappy. I shouldn't be this miserable. I shouldn't be struggling so much. The relationships that I was in were just terrible.
Hmm.
And yeah, just really destructive, for me and the other people and probably other people beyond that too. And another part of this too is one of my best friends, who was also, I would say, like a drinking friend, a partying friend.
Yeah.
Throughout this whole time, we've known each other since we were 17. A lot of this stuff happened, together. Like we went through all this together. But I saw her get sober and go to AA, probably a little bit before I went to my first meeting. And when I just saw that her ability to get sober, I was amazed, because I didn't think she could ever do it because I
Hmm.
thought she was like she was a bad alcoholic and I didn't really think that that would ever happen, that she would ever stop. And so she did. And I went to my first meeting. My first meeting was Overeaters Anonymous because, for me, I wasn't too concerned with like the alcohol and the money and the sex and everything. It was mostly an issue of like, I didn't like the fact that I would like gain and lose weight and gain and lose weight. And then, at points I got pretty big, that affected me. And I thought my ability to get partners. So that's what
Hmm.
was really driving it was like this desire to lose weight. I thought I'd go to OA for a little bit, lose some weight, and it'd be fine. So I started going about 11 years ago, and I didn't take it seriously. I didn't talk to people. I didn't do the steps. I didn't have a sponsor. In this 2 year span, things just kept getting worse and worse and worse. And at that time, I basically had a plan to kill myself.
Oh,
I
wow.
was yeah, I was feeling like I just couldn't figure out how to do it, because my grandma was still alive at this time and I was super close with her and I didn't want to hurt her that way. So I thought that if I move across the country and like live on the West Coast, I live in Minneapolis right now, but I'm from Illinois and I moved to Olympia, Washington for a while. And
Hmm.
my thought was if I can get away from it would at least be better to do it somewhere not near them. And so that was kind of my thought was like, I don't know how I'm going to do it or when, but I want to go so I can do this. So like I literally sold all my stuff and just went across the country and I was staying with a couple friends for a while. And something weird happened at that time though, because like I said, this was about 9 years ago. And for those 2 years, things were getting worse and worse and worse. And I was going to OA and I couldn't understand that. But this same friend who I saw get sober, she gave me like a stern talking to, like no one really ever had before. She was like, you're not taking care of yourself. You're not doing anything. You're not working the program. You don't connect with people. And for some reason, as a person who's like really stubborn and unwilling or was,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, I was able to hear it somehow, for some reason I heard it. And the next day I went to a meeting and asked someone to be my sponsor. That was the first time someone introduced me to the big book
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah.
because I had only been in OA up to that point. So he was like, I think you should start with the big book. So I got it. I started reading it, and that was probably the first time it really affected me deeply because it resonated. Like it sounds
Hmm.
like me. But what they talked about mostly was like the emotional aspect of it. Yeah, just like it was. There's of course it's about drinking, but it's mostly about like our emotional issues, our spiritual issues, and our inability to just kind of be with life as it is.
Yeah. Life on life's terms. Yeah.
Right, exactly. Yeah. That kind of transformed me a bit, I would say. Like what it did was it gave me this like little bit of hope. And I started to get curious, and think like, well, maybe, I don't know, maybe there is something here. Maybe I don't have to kill myself. I felt at least not suicidal, enough to kind of like put a pin in that idea. And when that happened, just things kind of started happening with the people I was living with. So I ended up just getting out of there and moving to Minneapolis just kind of randomly. I was looking for other places to live and just anywhere really. And I was just like, it just happened to happen here really quick and easy and fast. And like I got the job interview, got an apartment. And so I moved here. I've been here for almost 9 years now. And yeah, one of the first days I went to a meeting, I went to an OA meeting and I met my sponsor, who is still my sponsor, an OA sponsor, but I'd say, very instrumental in my recovery from all my addictions, including sex addiction.
Hmm.
Yeah. But so I've been sober for like 3 years and 3 months ish now. And at the same time, I've been abstinent with food, overeating. I've been solvent with like credit cards and debt for about almost as long.
Wow.
But so within that time, from 9 years ago to 3 years and 3 months ago, what happened was just a lot of the same stuff. Thank God, I never relapsed back into drinking, but I just continued with this pattern of, bad relationships. And also at the same time too, like in this period, my porn use really progressed to the point
Hmm.
of, I was just like, as it progresses, more and more intense things, or taboo things, more and more risky behaviors, like you doing it at work, multiple times during a shift at work, things like that. So it was progressing, and like I had a partner and I was cheating on her and we broke up. And then eventually I got into another relationship 6 years ago that I think this was the kind of the point where, and I was also started going to AA a little bit at that time too, just because that same OA sponsor is an AA and suggested that I check it out. And I think that really helped me kind of get a sense of like community and recovery, because the meeting I started going to, there was very service oriented. And
Hmm.
so it just really helped me like learn how to show up, and how to say yes to things and how to live in recovery, with other people, which I didn't know how to do. I didn't know how to do that at all. I was alone, isolated, all the time. Even if I was with other people, I was always alone, like spiritually.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but 6 years ago, I got in this relationship that I think was the first time I started thinking there was something really wrong with my relationship. Like I was with my relationship issues or like the way I relate to people romantically, or anyway, really, honestly. I'm codependent too, and I have like adult child, issues and
Hmm.
all that kind of stuff. But yeah, basically what happened was I entered this relationship with a person that I met on a dating app, which was not a good thing to begin with for me. definitely an inner circle behavior for me. So it just, it was not, the person was not a good fit for me. I'll just say that. And I was so convinced that I wanted to be with her no matter what,
Hmm.
that I just looked past all these big red flags, all this like just incompatibility stuff. And it was largely, I would say, based around sex too. I think it started out very sexual, like right away. And
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, and I was hooked, and I just actually thought that we would be together forever, even though we had a very short relationship and it didn't last very long at all. Yeah, so there was just all these red flags, not a healthy person for me. But then, I started acting out. Didn't act out sexually, but I was acting out with other things like food and stuff, and then
Hmm.
just kind of affected the relationship to the point where she broke up with me. When she broke up with me, I felt like I was going to die. I like just it was like excruciating. I couldn't believe it. Just like how intense it was and how I felt sick. I couldn't sleep. And I had never really experienced it like that before. And I started to think like, God, I think there's something wrong here. This doesn't seem right. I think part of me knew that it was like an oversized reaction. Because it was like we'd only dated for 3 months,
Yeah.
and it wasn't a good relationship to begin with, but I was having this crazy reaction to it. So I think that's what started me going to like SLAA and CODA. So I started in SLAA first because I definitely have the love addiction issues. I think,
Hmm.
yeah, I definitely understand that stuff too. And, okay, so like that happened. And then I started checking out SLAA and CODA and other like ACA. And again, I couldn't really get a grip on it though. I couldn't get sober. I was just continued to act out, continued for me. And for me at this point, it was exclusively like porn, after this relationship. It was just porn. Like I was alone, dating apps and porn. I was alone. I wasn't acting out with people in real life. I was too scared to.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, yeah, and it just became such an isolated thing. And like what I would do is like overeat, drink a bunch of caffeine, and just stay up all night watching porn, swiping on dating apps, and looking for people to like just chat with because that's all I felt. I didn't feel comfortable meeting up in real life, so I would just chat with people, and try to elicit, like sexting or something from a
Hmm.
conversation. So it just continued like that for 2.5 years, and then again, I got to a point where I was just miserable. I was like, I started to feel suicidal again. I really, I did. I didn't want to live, and I'd get like some periods of sobriety here and there, but at least at this time, I started to acknowledge like, oh yeah, dating apps are a problem for me. Porn is a problem for me. I think up until then, I didn't think so because I sort of had this idea that I was raised in kind of a shame-based religion,
Yeah, yeah.
with a lot of shame around sex, and I thought that if I'm not into porn, that just means I'm like a religious prude or something like that. So
Yeah, yeah.
I wanted to be open minded. So I thought, porn is it's just natural. It's normal. It's fine. Same thing with dating apps too. But it just kept progressing, and like I said, riskier and riskier behaviors around it, and riskier content. Thankfully, I never got into illegal stuff purposefully.
Good,
But
good.
yeah, but
Yeah.
it could only be a matter of time. You know what I mean? Before that would have happened if I had kept going.
Hmm.
But thankfully, at some point, the thought of feeling suicidal again really scared me. And I don't know how it happened or why it happened this way, but I just think of it as God. Grace, mercy, something like that. Just from a higher power. Because for many years, I had like people in my life had been telling me you should go to treatment. And is it okay if I mention a treatment?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay, cool. So people have been telling me, my sponsor, my therapist, and other people, have been saying like, I think you could use treatment, and I just wasn't even interested at all in that idea. But remember, at some point, I was just sitting in my car, and I think I talked to my therapist because I was in a crisis. I was like in a crisis where I was just like I'm suicidal, and I need help,
Hmm.
and I talked to her on the phone and I talked to my sponsor and they were just like, you got to go. And I just felt this like relief and release of whatever it was I was holding on to and hanging on to. And I felt light for the first time, like maybe ever,
Hmm. Hmm.
or just like, I don't have to keep fighting this, and I thank God I listened to that and I didn't, try to push it away or anything. But right after that, I called a treatment center in Los Angeles because I was looking for a treatment center for sex addiction, and it was a 12-step based one, which I appreciate that too. I was looking for that as well. But
Yeah.
yeah, so I found a place and I called them and they said, you can come in a couple weeks because we're full up right now. And then, I said, okay. And then I made plans to go. And then a little bit later, they called me back and said that someone had just canceled and that they could get me in this weekend, and it was like a Friday. You can come here Sunday. Oh, another part of this too that I should mention is I just gotten a new job that I really liked,
Mm-hmm.
that I still have. And I was terrified because I had just gotten this new job and to take a month off to go to treatment.
Yeah, yeah, especially right when you start. Yeah.
Yeah, I was terrified, but at the same time, I just knew like I'm fighting for my life here, literally like there's no guarantee that I'll make it out of it if I don't go. And I didn't know if it was going to work either, because struggling with this stuff for 36 years, it's a long time. And, it gets to be, I mean, it just wears on you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But I went and yeah, thankfully my job was understanding and they allowed me to do it, without any, I mean, yeah, they allowed me to go, very graciously, just like take care of yourself, please. And yeah, and you have a job when you get back. And so I went and it saved my life. It really did. It was intense, very intensive. It was pretty much recovery from like the moment we woke up till the moment we went to sleep,
Mm-hmm.
7 days a week. There was a lot of, group therapy, which I found helpful, but I really appreciated just the way that they incorporated the program into everything. It was because the people who ran it were in recovery for sex addiction themselves. And yeah, and just seeing their examples too of people who actually recovered and got better was really inspirational to me. And yeah, it inspired me, and the whole thing, I thought it was, I mean, it was just one of the best experiences in my life. It was, a lot of people I think found it challenging. I just knew that I needed it so bad. I didn't have access to technology there while I was there.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't be alone except to use the bathroom. And I needed that. Like I just needed constant, basically babysitting because if I had access to something, I was going to act out. And I really needed that supervision. And I felt like it was like a really caring, beautiful thing. Yeah, I was totally open to it. And I knew that I needed it. So I accepted it gladly. But yeah, it saved my life. And while I was there too, like I had seen a psychiatrist before, but I didn't take it seriously. But when I was there, I was diagnosed with OCD and
Mm-hmm.
depression, major depression and anxiety, which I've been being treated for, which has helped a lot too. Thankfully, yeah, that happened there. And yeah, I was terrified when I got out. I didn't know how I was going to do it. I'd been sober for a little bit before I left, a few days, my sobriety day is March 31st, 2023. And I went in like April 2nd or something like that, or April 3rd.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been sober for just a few days and I was just terrified. I was, like leaving, dropped off at the airport, at LAX and just like, okay, like now what,
Yeah, yeah.
how do I live my life now soberly? But God, I don't know. It's been a trip, I think the good thing is, I had the drive to be in recovery no matter what, and put it before everything else. So when I got back, I hit a meeting immediately, because I was scared, and so I hit a meeting. I still go to meetings pretty much every day. I miss here and there, but I didn't miss a meeting for probably a year or close to it.
Wow.
And I go multiple times a day, some days. Yeah, I got sponsors right away. Because I think at that time, I had my OA sponsor, but I didn't think I had an S sponsor at that point. I think I had a temporary one at that point. Yeah. And then I eventually found someone who was a better fit. I was looking for someone who understood, my specific issues and things that I dealt with, and just that was helpful for me. So I found someone that was more in alignment with that, who I work with now. I don't know exactly how long we've been working together, but a while. But yeah, I just, I got to work right away. And I started doing the steps, though I had done them in other programs. Never finished. I still haven't. I really should finish all my amends. I've done all my steps, except I haven't finished all of my amends yet. But yeah, another thing too, I mentioned another program. Like when I got out, I know food's a problem, alcohol's a problem, sex addiction, porn's a problem. But I knew that I have money issues. You
had mentioned being solid with your credit and stuff earlier. So yeah, I was curious if you went into recovery for that as well.
I did. Yeah. I started going to Debtors Anonymous, super reluctant to do that because, at that point I was in 3 programs already and I was like, I don't want to do another one. But I also knew that for me, this is my experience, that all my addictions kind of, they became really enmeshed, like towards the end, whereas like, if I'm compulsively shopping with credit cards, in 5 minutes, I'm going to be using porn. In 5 minutes, I'm going to be over it. It was just like, I couldn't separate them at all. It was like, if I did one, I was going to do the other. So yeah, I was just, that fear of acting out, being, breaking sobriety and recovery, I was willing to go to try DA. So I tried it. and I resonated with it right away. It's been amazing. It's been a really amazing program. It's because I've had financial problems my whole life, and I never was able to take care of myself. I relied on other people for money. I borrowed a lot of money. I used credit cards. Yeah, I was loaned money to go to treatment and then see the psychiatrist, and that was the last time. And so it was, almost 3 years and 3 months ago, but not quite. And yeah, all the programs, and I think the past couple of years, the first year I just really focused on recovery. And then about 2 years ago, I've been focused on recovery the whole time since I got out, but just like new things have been evolving in my life because of the DA, being able to kind of work out to get my own place. Finally, I used to always have to have roommates. So to get my own place, to, be able to take some solvent vacations, some really nice vacations, the past couple of years. And then I think that the big thing these days is like being in a relationship, getting into a relationship almost 5 months ago. And so that's been a new thing, just like a new level of recovery that is, yeah, it's been interesting. It's been challenging, to like confront a lot of the things in me that I still struggle with, which is like self-esteem and codependency and self-love. Yeah. Yeah. And like not wanting, but just kind of being habitually accustomed to like seeking validation, or from another person, something outside myself. And so I've had to start doing a lot of work in that area of my life the past 5 months. Because it surprised me, because I think I got really good at taking care of myself, being single in recovery. And I got to a point where I was really feeling like I'm good, like, whether I'm with someone or not, I'm okay. And then, the relationship started happening and it just like, it came out again, like this intense, a lot of feelings, a lot of uncomfortable feelings. Yeah. It's a really good relationship. It's a really lovely person, and it's really good for me, but also he's just forcing me to grow in new ways that I didn't expect. Yeah. So yeah. And you had mentioned you wanted to talk about, I think work is a part of that too.
Yeah. Before getting to that, I was curious, after coming out of the treatment, you mentioned going to a meeting right away. Was that with SLAA, or did you kind of make a transition from SLAA to SAA, or?
Yeah, I did. Sorry. I transitioned to SAA mostly probably about 4 years ago. So it was before I went to treatment. I had transitioned to that. I found that with my specific behaviors that I was really partaking in at that time, it was a lot more resonant with SAA. And I think too, just for me, I found things like it felt like a better fit for me, because I think to me, it felt like there was a stronger emphasis on, working the program and working the steps and service and things like that felt comfortable for me because of, being comfortable with AA as well. Yeah. One thing I love about it is, I do prison service.
Oh, yeah.
Like I take a meeting to a prison here to people who are, sex offenders, and yeah, just having those kinds of opportunities, like SAA has given me those opportunities, and so yeah, I just felt like it was a better fit for me.
Nice. Yeah, it's been interesting over the past couple of months. A lot of the episodes have been focused on those that are incarcerated and taking meetings into prisons. We've been working with San Quentin, and there is just I don't know if it's just with San Quentin, but there's a lot of red tape involved, and in trying to get people that are vetted to come in and bring in meetings. A lot of people in the Bay Area that are close to San Quentin sponsor people in San Quentin, but they can't be the ones that bring the meeting in due to their rules and stuff. Right. So we've got an ongoing project with trying to establish a meeting that is led by those of us on the outside. And so that's something ongoing. But yeah, I've noticed a similar theme over the past few months with the episodes I've been putting out that have been touching that subject. So that's really great to hear that you've got a meeting that you take into a local place.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing to be able to do it. I hope you get to do it. I hope it comes together in San Quentin because it's a really good service to offer. I think people really appreciate it. As we know, that it could be any of us,
Yeah.
So
yeah, I did want to transition to your occupation. One of the things you had mentioned in your email is that you're a death doula.
Hmm.
and really curious about how you got into that and what it's like for you. I do have a friend in program. I don't know if he necessarily called himself a doula or not, but he always mentioned working in hospice, which
Hmm.
is, again, end of life service. So, I've talked to him a number of years, what he does, and he's a musician and brings a lot of music into that. And so I'm really curious about your experience in being a doula.
Hmm. Yeah, thanks for asking. I think for my doula journey really parallels my recovery journey. I got interested in it about actually, what specifically sparked my interest was that end of that relationship that I was in that also
Mm-hmm.
made me kind of wonder, like, God, I think there's something wrong with the way I relate to sex and love and relationships. Because man, like part of the relationship was dishonesty, and part of the dishonesty was I was having health issues that I was not open about because I was scared and I was in pretty much in denial. I just thought if I ignored them that they would get better. And they were concerning, and thankfully in a sort of a desperate attempt to save the relationship, I was like, I'll go to the doctor, I'll get all this stuff checked out. But I was convinced I was going to die because I'm a catastrophizer. And
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
so I was convinced that I was going to die. And so I started reading books about death. And I was reading the book, the Thich Nhat Hanh book called No Death, No Fear. And I don't know, I just had this sort of feeling like, I think I want to work in hospice. Actually, what specifically what it was I think I want to be a hospice chaplain.
Mm-hmm.
And that thought went through my head. I don't know. It was interesting though, because, as a person who's sort of, lived in stories a lot and, pursued things that are not necessarily good for me, in material ways too, like, with status and material things. I've had a lot of ideas about things that I could do, in my life
Mm-hmm.
for money or for work. And, they usually revolved around status or something, like
Mm-hmm.
lofty, but I never had an idea like, oh, I think I want to be a hospice chaplain, like something humble. So I was curious about it. So I started, well, actually, my sponsor was just like, start getting some experience, go see if you like it, go volunteer. So I started volunteering. I volunteered and I would say it was a really good thing for me to do. And I was volunteering all up until I went to treatment. It was really good for me. I think, that was one thing that also just kind of kept me coming back and showing up just because like I found I was finding this new thing that I cared about, and
Mm-hmm.
I do and I did care a lot about it. I don't know, I'd never had a passion like that before, where I felt like I'll go somewhere in the middle of the night to go sit with someone who's dying. I was just like passionate about doing it,
Mm-hmm.
and I was just all volunteer at that point. But yeah, it was one of those things where it was like it just felt like a calling, to do something more than anything I'd ever had before. And I'd never had that before. And it was pretty exciting too, to be like invigorated by this new interest that I was having. Yeah. So I did a lot of volunteering. I did a lot of, going to places to volunteer to sit with people who are dying. I mostly did that. We call it sitting vigil or,
Mm-hmm.
11th hour. So a lot of what I did at that time was just sit with people who are dying and be with them. Yeah. Then the treatment thing happened and I went to treatment. When I got back, I met this group of people who here, there's three facilities in this area that
Mm-hmm.
they employ death doulas at their nursing homes and they employ death doulas in the nursing homes. And I met one of them and started volunteering with them first. So they had like a death doula volunteer program in addition to having the employees. I did that for about 6 months. And then that eventually led to me getting a job as a death doula at a different facility when there was an opening for one. And that was about 2.5 years ago now that I got that. So pretty much right when I got into treatment, started that volunteering thing, did that for 6 months, and then I got this job that I've been doing for about 2.5 years now. I've also done a little bit of private practice. I've started to explore that too
Mm.
because working in a facility is like a very specific kind of
Yeah. Yeah.
thing, And I think doing it in private practice is also a different thing. And I don't have any experience with that, but I do have a lot of experience now working in a facility. And it's challenging. I mean, just to be honest, it's challenging, to work in a corporate nursing home. Yeah, yeah. The healthcare system is
Mm-hmm.
not in a good shape, I would say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of my friends, he actually, on the other side of it, went to mortuary school
Mm,
and was in a short documentary talking about death
mm,
and the fact that here in the US, it seems to be a taboo subject and something that people would rather not confront and think about. So they had people that they were interviewing from, all sorts of aspects of life and death. And, my friend, he is a mortician for a number of years, and now he works with the university with the bodies program for medical students and stuff like that.
Mhm.
But watching that documentary, he's like, hey, check this out, something that I was on. And it was just real interesting for me. There are certain cultures around the world that it's more embraced and, part of connecting with ancestors and things like that. And, here in the US, it's just kind of brushed off to the corner. And we never really think about the careers that are in there. So yeah, my friend who was a hospice chaplain, this other friend, when he was talking to me about some of the things that he did, and this awesome singer. And he was inspired by me and one of our other friends who play guitar to pick up a stringed instrument. And he started playing ukulele and brought that into his hospice care and playing and singing for people. And it really helped him connect with people and making their transition as easy as possible. And
Mhm.
so, yeah, when I saw your email, it's like, yeah, this is something that we never think about, or if we think about it, we don't talk about it. And so, yeah, I'm really grateful that you brought that up.
Yeah, thanks for asking. Yeah, I'm passionate about it. I care about it. I love it. I think for me, the I don't know. I guess it's a very spiritual thing,
Hmm.
to just be in the presence of that. I think it's for me, it's like it's really connected to my higher power. I feel like I've never been there for birth, but I imagine it's probably very similar.
Hmm.
But for me, around death, I just feel that presence of God is so palpable.
Hmm.
In that space and in that presence of it. And I don't understand that or like why that is,
Hmm.
but
Hmm.
I really do feel like God is just there, so palpably, And I think that's what really drew me to it, that I was really surprised by, that I didn't expect that when I started volunteering, that that
Hmm.
that would be the case, that it would be such a deeply spiritual thing. But I think it's also really related to my interest in Buddhism too, and it just
Hmm.
the concept of impermanence, and yeah, like everything changes and everything passes away, and yeah, so that's been a really important part of it too for me, just that spiritual practice of always remembering impermanence.
Hmm. How did
Yeah.
you move from the religion of your childhood into Buddhism?
Mm. From a really young age, I was not interested in the religion I was raised in.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I just thought it was bullshit,
Hmm. Hmm.
like from a pretty young age, and I couldn't wait till I was old enough to stop going to church, for my
Hmm.
parents making me go, and I stopped going as soon as I could. It was, I think it was maybe after high school, I briefly did a little community college. And I think maybe because of a class, I read a Thich Nhat Hanh book.
Hmm.
Um, I think it was Living Buddha, Living Christ. And I remember just, it impacted me,
Hmm.
it had an impact on me, probably more than I realized. Cause like I didn't really start practicing Buddhism until a little over about 2.5 years ago. I was always interested in it. I like appreciated the concepts, and when I would, hear about it or read about it, and I thought, I was like, it sounds cool, that sounds true. But it was really the hospice chaplaincy idea, that made me start practicing more diligently, because I thought, if I want to be a hospice chaplain, there has to be, well, the program I wanted to do was a Buddhist hospice chaplaincy program. And I thought, well, I don't even know if I like to practice Buddhism, so I should probably try that and see.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah. So I remember just on a New Year's Eve, lonely, bored, and didn't have anything to do. So I went to a meditation center, and it was amazing. I've literally gone since then, at least every week. And I don't know, it was one of those things where I feel like yoga is like this too, and bird watching is another thing like this for
Hmm.
me, where I just kind of had this suspicion that I'd always get into it. So I always thought, like, I think at some point in my life I'll probably be into yoga. I'll probably be into Buddhism
Hmm.
more diligently or more dedicated. And yeah, just it happened when it did, and it's been great, because it's like I love it. I love going to the meditation center on Sundays, and I read about it when I'm not like I'm usually reading about it in some capacity,
Hmm.
or listening to a podcast or something about it. So yeah, it's really enriched my spiritual life for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, the episode that will air just before this one, we talked about being on Dharma recovery, which is 12-step addiction related stuff through Buddhism. So it covers a lot of different process addictions.
Hmm.
And a friend of mine has been part of that for a while and leads meditations. And they've invited me to online meetings, and it's been really wonderful. I don't think of myself as a Buddhist, but I follow a lot, much more with Buddhism than anything else. It's something that interested me. And in college, I remember taking a survey of Asian art and looking at art from India through China through Japan, and a lot of it centered on Buddhism. And of course, music wise, I'm really into Tibetan monks, throat singing, and things like that. So I've had like this leaning towards Buddhism. And so it's really cool that we're talking about it here on this episode as well.
Yeah, I had listened to an episode of this podcast earlier today, and I recall you mentioning that you're interested in Buddhism. So I'm glad it came up too.
Yeah.
Do you feel like it blends so well with like programming?
Hmm.
A lot of times when I'm listening to like a Dharma talk or something, it just sounds like it could be a recovery thing.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I remember prior to me starting this podcast, I used to listen to a lot of, I still do, a lot of recovery podcasts, and found one. It was centered on Taoism, actually, and they were kind of working it through the 12-step angle, and how a lot of those writings and teachings kind of fall in line with a lot of the stuff in program, just
Mhm.
learning to let go. is
Yeah.
is a huge one.
Yeah.
And so that's where I seem to find much more of a connection. You talked earlier about the religion of your childhood being from a shaming background,
Mhm.
and I do find that with a lot of Judeo-Christian religions. And I'm not trying to pinpoint anyone, but for myself and many others in program that I've talked to have had that same thought of coming from a shame based and wanting to find something that was different.
Mhm.
I do have a lot of friends in program that still are part of those religions that they grew up with, and it works for them, and that's completely awesome. But for me, that was not going to be something that worked. But yeah, I connect with the idea of the oneness, and just like everyone being part of this universal thing. I'm a huge Tool fan,
Mhm.
and Alex Gray does their artwork, a lot of their artwork, and a lot of his artwork is based on metaphysical stuff and incorporates a lot with Buddhist type of stuff. And he's got other world religions tied into it as well, but a lot of the interest of the cyclical nature of life and death, I
Mhm.
see in his artwork. And so I see that through Buddhism and stuff, and really key in on a lot of those types of things.
Yeah. Yeah, he has some interesting paintings like specifically about death, I think.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah. They're really cool.
Yeah, I might be able to, given now that I've got the sexaddictsrecoverypod.com website, I can add images to various things and I might do a blog post that goes along with this one where I can share some of Alex Gray's artwork. Yeah, it's like a lot of times, like when I try to describe it, just in audio format, it doesn't really work. But, having the ability to say, hey, check out the blog post here and you can see exactly what we're talking about. But yeah, he does have a series of paintings that are about the process of death. And there's one especially that I can think of. I don't remember the title of it, but someone's sitting next to a bed as one's last breath, and you can see kind of the spirit. And a lot of his stuff has flame and eye imagery, and seeing that kind of float out of the body. But yeah, when I got into his artwork, I got a couple of his books, and so I really started connecting with a lot of that art, and
Hmm.
just really loved it.
Hmm. It's cool. Yeah. I remember one of my first girlfriends in high school got me Lateralis for my
Hmm.
birthday, and I like Tool too.
Hmm.
But yeah, the artwork, amazing. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. It blew my mind. I was like 15 years old or something, and yeah.
Yeah, that was right when I got into program, and I really connected with that album. And yeah, I'd been a Tool fan, since '93, but it was Lateralis that kind of took them from a band that I was into to like top tier. It's like, wow,
Yeah.
I totally connect with this. So,
Hmm. Hmm.
but yeah, Alex Gray's artwork, Net of Being, which is the cover artwork for their album 10,000 Days, is something that I really connected to. And I would love to have that tattooed on my body, but it's just a lot of intricate artwork. I've seen a couple of people that have had full shoulder tattoos and it looks amazing, but just how many sessions they have to go through to get that done. It's just like, yeah, I don't know if I have that in me.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you have tattoos?
I actually do not. People would be amazed. I've got the big ass beard. I've got the kilt, and you think I would be tattooed, and half a head shaved, and I would totally fit in. My sister, who was like a just totally into, well, pop and kind of normie type music and stuff. She's got 3 or 4 tattoos, and look at the two of us. You'd think that I would be the one with tattoos
Hmm.
and not
Hmm.
her. So yeah, that's funny. But yeah, I do plan on getting a couple of things done. One that I've kind of scaled down what I want to get done, but the inside of the Lateralis CD, there's something called the Vajra Cross that has some spirals coming out of it, and I thought about getting that done, and it's like a much simpler piece than the Net of Being artwork.
Hmm.
So
Nice.
yeah. So talking about music, you mentioned that you're really into music and playing music. So I'm curious what you had to say about that.
Yeah, music, I've sort of had this love-hate relationship with it for my life because I love it. I always wanted to be a musician and I am and I have been, in a lot of ways, but
Hmm.
also it's like the inner critic in me has like never been able to fully just embrace that because of yeah, it's pretty loud, so, like especially with creative things for some reason with me. So I taught myself to play guitar when I was really young. I was like 14 or 15
Hmm.
after the breakup with my very first girlfriend. She broke up with me and I was just sad. So I was like, I'm gonna learn to play guitar so I can sing songs about being sad about it. And
Hmm.
yeah, and so I did learn. I was pretty much an obsession from like 15 to 22 or so, 21, 22. And I played, for hours and hours every day. I was in a band with some of my high school friends and
Hmm.
my
Hmm.
younger brother. And yeah, we played shows. It was really fun. And then, high school ended and we sort of dissipated. And I kept playing. I would say that I started to probably play like more experimental music at that time, more
Hmm.
kind of like I got some guitar pedals that I like to mess around with, like looping pedals and like
Hmm.
delay pedals and things like that, like the Memory Man. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but I like to mess around with that thing and like keyboards and stuff. And
Hmm.
I would play with this artist and we'd do like sort of small Midwest tours, to like Chicago, Indiana, Wisconsin,
Hmm.
and we do little like mini tours kind of, and we'd play together. And, it was, I don't know, at some point, I feel like it just like as my addiction ramped up and got worse and worse, like my inner critic got worse and worse. And I just kind of became like incapable of playing really, like because it was
Hmm.
just loud all the time. So at the same time that I sold all my stuff and moved across the country because I wanted to end my life, like I sold all my musical equipment. And then when I moved to Minneapolis, I bought a guitar again. And I've just had this one acoustic guitar that I do play. And yeah, I just kind of I play for fun now, and I don't really have like ambitions, I guess, at this point. I mean, maybe it would be cool to be in a band again at some point, but it's mostly just for fun and
Hmm.
yeah. But I think too, I'm just like obsessively looking for new music all the time, always looking for new music, and I make a lot of mixes. I think they're
Hmm.
pretty good. I would say I think they're pretty good. I will say that. I don't know if other people think so, but I think they're pretty good. And I'll just kind of obsessively look for music for a while and then just dump all my recently loved songs or like songs into a playlist. And so yeah, and I've kind of always done that actually because I think from the time that I got into music, I was 13 when I got into music, and before that I wasn't really into it, but it was Radiohead that got me, OK Computer that got me into
Nice.
music.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah, that was the first record that I ever heard that I like just I played it obsessively, and it got me into music. And ever since then, I remember making, mixes with CDs and things like that for friends. And in the early days of downloading, Napster and
Mm.
things like that.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Always looking for new music. And that's just a thing. I think that's an outer circle thing for me too, for sure, playing and listening to music. And yeah, I've almost always got it on. I got my speaker, my little portable speaker that I take it with me all
Hmm.
everywhere. And I'm always listening to music and kind of always looking for new stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. At one point, I thought about making a website. This is, way before I was into podcasting and thinking about calling it Confessions of a Serial Tape Mixer or something like that.
Mhm.
And yeah, I started making mixtapes when I was in fourth grade. And we had probably between me and my friends, we had like maybe 10 albums and stuff. And we took like the best songs and put them together.
Mhm.
And I can just remember over the years, there was one tape that I found, God, in maybe 2007 or so. It's a tape that we made when we were in sixth grade. And I took all those songs and it's like, I've got all these digitally. I'm just going to recreate this mix
Mhm.
and, gave it to my friends and stuff. But yeah, from there, I made like a whole bunch of mixes of like mellow music, a whole ton of mixes on aggressive music.
Mhm.
And I had playlists on my early iPods for music that involved like tribal drumming
Mhm.
and so yeah, I called that like the tribal jam and just like
Mhm.
I would just find a category of stuff and that's what got me into when I started looking at a higher power for this program and finding that connection with music and making spiritual mixes.
Mhm.
And my friends in program, my first couple of mixes, and it's like, hey, I've just put this together. Check this out and stuff. And a couple of my friends, we started trading different spiritual mixes. And yeah, I still have a majority of the mixes I ever made, whether it's actually on CD or in MP3 form. A bunch of my CDs are scratched up and
Yeah.
unplayable, but I still have the MP3 copies of those mixes. So I started making MP3 CDs. My car can play those discs, and so I
Mhm.
can load up like five or six of them onto there. And Halloween mixes is another one. But yeah, I have a huge passion for making mixes and stuff. Just
Me
love that.
too.
Yeah.
There's an art to it, right? I think there's
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. Yeah, I'll get really into it. I'll take, days and days just to kind of like rearranging them perfectly to what I think
Hmm.
is perfectly, yeah. And just like listening to through them and making sure that they're just right,
Hmm.
And it's usually just me that listens to them. I wish I had
Yeah,
more to perform with, but
yeah.
do you use any streaming or anything?
Yeah, I use Apple streaming and I have Spotify, but I don't use it all that often. So I made playlists for the podcast of number one, my spiritual mixes, and number two, all of the music that I played on the podcast. And that one I still need to update. I haven't updated that since like I can't remember what episode I got to, but that
Mm,
one's a couple of hundred songs. But yeah, I made sure to make a playlist on Apple and a playlist on Spotify. And for a while, it was harder to search for it. I think they're under SARP or SARPod.
mm,
Um, and now that I've got the website, I've got a couple of links you can go to for the music playlists. The episode I did with my friends talking about punk and hardcore, I wanted to keep that music separate because it's not really recovery related, but we all are in program and bonded over this music and we just had a blast talking about it. And there's like 70 songs on that episode alone.
mm.
So
What kind of punk and hardcore do you like?
for me, a lot of it is like early 80s stuff. Dead Kennedys, Black Flag, Misfits, DRI, and I can just kind of go off on tangents. But yeah, Bad Religion. We were just talking about them last night. I went to a concert with my kid and my brother, and we were talking about shows that I went to at this venue, and I remember seeing No Doubt and Bad Religion
Mm,
at the spot, and being able to talk about that. And I've got a couple of friends. Oh God, yeah, like trying to remember some of the other shows that I went to, GBH and things like that. And
Mhm,
yeah,
mhm.
you?
Yeah, I like punk and hardcore. I like let's see. I mean, I think like I like a lot of the like late 70s stuff a lot, like The
Hmm.
Fall, Perry Ubu and
Oh yeah.
Wire, and I like that kind of stuff. Like maybe the post-punk stuff, I guess is what
Hmm.
they call it
Hmm.
now. I guess Talking Heads they kind of get grouped in there too, but
Yeah.
I love them. Or Mission of Burma is great. And then yeah, with hardcore, I like Black Flag. So like with hardcore, like I guess well with Flipper, they're sort of hardcore
Yeah.
kind
Yeah.
of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Flipper and
Um,
Husker Du. And
yeah, that's what you. Oh, what was I thinking of? Also like some in newer stuff. I like Converge a lot.
hmm.
Um, yeah, I think they're great. Yeah. Oh, there's another band I'm thinking of, but I can't remember right now. Yeah, Minor Threat. Um,
Hmm. Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. My friend, I think it was actually my roommate, got Ian MacKay's signature on his guitar.
Mhm.
He ran into him somewhere. He's like, "Hey, can you sign my guitar?"
Yeah.
This is really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Eventually, I really want to do a group discussion on music. And, I know that there have been a couple of guests that are really into music and talking about it. One of them I had just talked about. His band opened up for the tour that I saw last night was Death Angel and Violence, the thrash bands from the Bay Area.
Mhm.
And another guy in program who's been on the podcast, his band got to open for that when they were in his city. So he
Mhm.
was like one of the local openers for that. And he's like, dude, that show was awesome. I was like, hey, I'm seeing them in a couple days. So that was just last night for me.
Right. It's
But
awesome.
yeah, I want to get together some people to just shoot the shit around music, and I think you and I could just probably sit here and talk for like another hour,
Mhm.
just on, hey, do you remember this, and what do you think about this, and yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
If you want, if you're open to it, I could send you some of my mixes because I use Apple Music too.
yeah,
And
yeah, please do.
yeah, yeah, I'll just send you some and check them out. See if you think there's anything interesting on there.
Sweet, sweet. So we have been actually talking for more than an hour,
All
and
right.
is there anything else that you wanted to cover before we close this out?
I would just like to say that there is hope that things can always get better. I believe that's something that's available for every one of us. And I would just hope that people would at least never give up, like just keep seeking because it could be closer than one might think. I think if I can do it, certainly anybody can do it because I didn't think it was possible, to go a couple days without acting out, let alone years now. I think the most important thing for me is humility, just to remind myself every day that I have this affliction, this disease, and there's something in me that will ruin my life if I let it. It just is the way it is, and that's what I have to work with every day. So I have that. It's not a bad thing. It just is. What works for me is service and God. Yeah, God. And I don't know what God is. I can't define it. I don't
Hmm.
know, but it just know there's something bigger than me. There's something, yeah, I really don't know what it is. I can't say, but I think it's like a spirit force or an energy or something, that is just sort of present in everything, even the bad things like death, it's there. I don't say bad things, but the hard things. Yeah. A way that I can remember to be humble is to be of service to others and connect, with fellows who still struggle. And another thing about that too is just I'll say is it was hard for me to find a higher power that works for me, for a
Hmm.
long, long, long time. It took a long time, but eventually that clicked too. Yeah, there's hope, and I hope we all find it. Yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, Nathan, I thank you so much for emailing me, and really grateful that we had this chance to connect, and grateful to get to know you, and really looking forward to hearing some of your mixes.
Thanks, you too. Appreciate it. Yeah.
All right. Well, I'll talk to you soon.
Yeah. Take care.
Ah,
Thanks.
all right. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Many, many thanks to Nathan for emailing us and having this conversation. I had such a wonderful time. And as you can tell from the end, we probably could have gone another hour just talking about music. One of the things I did not mention in our conversation was when he brought up the band Minor Threat. I jumped right into the story about my roommate getting an autograph from Ian MacKay, and didn't preface it with Ian MacKay was the singer from Minor Threat, also Fugazi and Palehead. I will be getting to the music of Minor Threat and some of the other bands that we named in our conversation, as well as getting into songs from our playlists that we talked about. And I'll be getting to those shortly. But first, I wanted to touch on some feedback that we just received. We did get an email. It was rather lengthy. And since this conversation was long and I've got a lot of music to play, I'm going to save that one for the next episode. But we did get quite a few comments on YouTube, starting off with our friend from the Baltics on episode 193, saying, "Thank you, Hannah and host. Blessings from the Baltics." Awesome. Love getting those messages. This next one came in a little over a week ago on episode 114 with Jim W. It says, "Longtime fan, I recently went down hard on some new shit online targeting addicts. Glad to be sober again." And thank you for writing in. Glad you are sober too. We had a few other comments, and I'm not going to get into which episodes, but they were rather derogatory comments around the guests. On one of them, it said, "Wow, what a terrible person." And I just refocused it that, the person may have done terrible things, but he's not a terrible person. So we focus on the behaviors that are being done and not the person. So it's kind of the difference between guilt and shame. Shame is I am a shitty person. Guilt is I've done shitty things. So for recovery, we focus on the behavior rather than putting down the person. And I hope you find the help you need for needing to make a comment like this. On a much happier note, on episode 7, Am I a Sex Addict? We got this one that says, "I'm 6 weeks into SAA. These podcasts are helping so much." And awesome. I am so glad that they are helping. So with the comments from YouTube out of the way, like I mentioned, I'll read the email that we received on the next episode. Nothing new from Spotify or Apple. With that, I'm going to be moving on to some of the music that we talked about. In our conversation, we did talk about the subtle art of making mixtapes and playlists. And I immediately thought of John Cusack in the movie High Fidelity, where he turns to the camera, breaking the fourth wall, talking about the art of making a mixtape and the rules. So I wanted to play a short clip of that.
Now, the making of a good compilation tape is a very subtle art, many do's and don'ts. First of all, you're using someone else's poetry to express how you feel. This is a delicate thing. The making of a great compilation tape. Like breaking up is hard to do and takes ages longer than it might seem. You got to kick it off with a killer to grab attention. Then you got to take it up a notch. But you don't want to blow your wad, so then you got to cool it off a notch. There are a lot of rules.
Yeah. I remember watching this movie with my wife, and she gave me kind of an elbow to the side. It's like, that's you. So anyway, during the end there, we did talk a lot about music. And I wanted to start off things with the band Radiohead that Nathan mentioned, in particular the album OK Computer. And my favorite song from the album is Paranoid Android. And that's a nice reference to Douglas Adams and The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. But anyway, this one is my favorite, so I thought I would play a little bit of Paranoid Android.
When I am king, you will be fast against the wall. With your opinion, which is of no consequence at all. What's
Love it. And yes, this is a fantastic album. I did play the song Let Down on a previous episode of the podcast. Just thinking of the music from previous episodes. In our conversation, I mentioned that I had not updated the music and recovery playlist for all the songs that I had played on the podcast. I had stopped roughly around episode 164. Over the past week, I've updated both Apple and Spotify, so they're both current and up to 500 plus songs now. So if you are interested, I will be putting links in the show notes for this, but there's also a spot on the podcast website, sexaddictsrecoverypod.com, for the various music playlists that I've created for the podcast. I do have 3 separate playlists. One was for my spiritual playlists. That one is a pretty static playlist where I combined all of my spiritual CD mixes into one long playlist. And that one is called SARP, Sex Addicts Recovery Podcast, Spiritual Mixes. The one that has all of the songs from the podcast is called SARP, Music and Recovery. And I also did one SARP, Misfits of Recovery, We Are 138. And that goes along with episode 138, where we talked a lot about various punk and hardcore music. That playlist unto itself is 72 songs. And being that they're a little bit more aggressive, I chose to create a static playlist for that. And talking about punk and hardcore, some of the other songs I did want to play here before turning to the music for our playlist was the band Minor Threat, the singer Ian MacKaye. Minor Threat did a cover of the song I'm Not Your Stepping Stone, which was popular in the 1960s, and so I wanted to play a little bit of that. Awesome. Love it. And I also wanted to play some Black Flag. And I had a few songs that I was thinking about, but ended up settling on Gimme, Gimme, Gimme. And so here is that.
Gimme, gimme, gimme! I need some more! Gimme, gimme, gimme! Don't ask what for! 1, 2, 3, 4! Standing here like a loaded gun, waiting to go off! I got nothing to do but shoot my mouth off! So gimme, gimme, gimme! Gimme some more! Gimme, gimme, gimme! Don't ask what for!
This is a great one. I also thought about playing Black Coffee or My War. Some of the songs from Minor Threat and Black Flag ended up on the Misfits of Recovery playlist, if you're interested in hearing more. Moving on, before getting to my playlist, Nathan had sent me a number of his playlists. Some of them are very long, so there's a lot of stuff. Many bands that I've never heard of, so it's really great going through those. But he had a series called Soft Open. So we got Soft Open 1 through, I think, 14. Also a playlist called Spring, What Was Winter, and Juniper Rain. But each of those was really cool to check out. So when he was sending me these playlists, he mentioned that the title Soft Open was a reminder to himself to be soft and open. I did want to play a couple of songs that he has back to back on Soft Open number 5. I am a huge Tori Amos fan, and he does have a number of Tori Amos songs in his playlists, but this one is a song called Jackie's Strength.
Movie 8 till her wedding day. Shots rang out, the police came, mama laid me on the front lawn and prayed for Jackie's strength. Feeling old by 21, never thought my day would come. My bridesmaids getting late, pray for Jackie's strength. Make me laugh, say you know what you want. You said we were real fine, so I shall eat some more. And I learned what black magic can do. Make me laugh.
Fantastic. Love that song. And it's followed up by the song Don't Change from NXS. This is probably one of my favorites from NXS.
I'm standing here on the ground. The sky above won't fall down. Seeing no evil in all directions. Resolution of happiness. Things have been dark for too long. Don't change for you. Don't change a thing for me. Don't change for you. Don't change a thing for me.
Awesome. In our conversation, he did mention the band Flipper, and there's a song or two of theirs in the various mixes.
In life, my friends, pass along. You need not grieve if things go wrong. Sit down in peace and sing a song till all comes right. You've heard it said, go do your best till life's sun sinks to the west. 'Tis better far to take a rest till all comes right.
My favorite of his playlist is Soft Open number 11. One of the things I love about this is it's got a lot of really heavy, aggressive music, but also some great hip hop and many other different types of music. But it starts off with Roots, Bloody Roots from Sepultura.
We're growing every day, exploring in every way. I'll take you to a place where we can find our roots. Bloody roots, roots, bloody roots, roots, bloody roots, roots, bloody roots. Bring me the strength to get drunk another day.
Also on this playlist, he's got Red Hot Chili Peppers, Rollins Band, Funkadelic, New Order, Fishbone, Nail Bomb, which is another offshoot of Max Cavalera from Sepultura and Soulfly, Sinead O'Connor, Pink Floyd, The Melvins, Neurosis, Diggable Planets, Post Malone, De La Soul, the song Breaks.
There's a lot of people out here who just don't know what plays a factor in moving heads and toes. It be them hits banging out of them stereo kits, whether cassette, radio, or CD bits. Mixtapes from the best going on and on throughout the city grounds to suburban lawns. Man, we don't play, even where we stay. Video shows the visuals of jams today, coinciding with the rhythm of the heart and neck. The breaks got you in your proper context. You let the Lex or your 64 engine bounce away all your tension. En route to the club where girls need the quenching.
Living Color, ZZ Top. Love this combination. Notorious B.I.G. going right into a Slayer song. Got Bad Brains, Solange, Motorhead, Napalm Death, and The Proclaimers. So just a lot of various things on that one. Each of the mixes are very eclectic, but this one was my favorite. So I wanted to move on to a few of my mixes. I had mentioned that I had lots of different focused mixes, one of them being the tribal jam that I was talking about, a lot of tribal sounding drums. You got some stuff from lounge music with bongos. A song called Kaiwas from Sepultura. When they play it live, they would have floor toms set up, and various other musicians from different bands would come out and play the drums along with the drummer. Awesome. Yeah, another band that was really into percussion that I was into was a band called Shark Bait. and they had all sorts of percussive things on stage. When I got to see them live, I remember them having like a washing machine out in the crowd that people could just bang on along with the band. Kind of like the show Stomp or the Blue Man Group. Yeah, just various found objects, being able to turn that into percussion. And another band that has just recently started playing shows again is the band Neurosis. Very aggressive band, but really cool with their messaging. I may be talking about one of their songs that they just put out, but again, when they played live, they also had some floor toms up in front that the guitarist and bassist would play along with their drummer, and so you just had this wall of drums. And so this is a song called Cleanse. Loved seeing those guys live. Another fun mix that I made was something called Cartoons, and it had just a number of covers of cartoon music, theme songs, as well as music from Carl Stalling, who did a lot of the Warner Brothers, Bugs Bunny cartoon music. I believe I had like little snippets of commercials in between songs. But yeah, I did want to play a little bit of the Carl Stalling project. And there's a cover of the Scooby-Doo song from Matthew Sweet.
Scooby-Dooby-Doo, where are you? We got some work to do now. Scooby-Dooby-Doo, where are you? We need some help from you now. Come on, Scooby-Doo, I see you, pretending you've got a sliver. But you're not fooling me, 'cause I can't see the way you shake and shiver. You know we got a mystery to solve, so Scooby-Doo, be ready for your act. Don't hold back. And Scooby-Doo, if you come through, you're gonna have yourself a Scooby snack. Scooby-Dooby-Doo, here are you.
And the Ramones covering the Spider-Man song.
Spider-Man, Spider-Man, does whatever a spider can. Spins a web in his eyes, catches thieves just like flies. Look out, here comes the Spider-Man.
Love all these. So yeah, it was a fun mix of just cartoon music.
As your body grows bigger,
Your mind must flower.
it's great to learn.
Cause knowledge is power.
It's Schoolhouse Rocket, a chip off the block of your favorite schoolhouse rock.
Another set of mixes that I made, I called Lazy Days and DAZE. Just kind of a mellow vibe, and I had mentioned that in our conversation. I made probably about 16 of those mixes. The intent was kind of a lazy afternoon road trip type of vibe, and I wanted to play a few songs from those. I'll probably be playing more of these in the future, since I've played a lot of the songs from my spiritual mixes already, but these ones are ones that just kind of relax me. This song is one that I found from a band called Madre Blue, in Italian called Certamente.
Certamente passerà qui su di me immediatamente. Io mi mi scorderò di te completamente, tornerò alla realtà e lentamente la tua voce se ne andrà. Aspetto qui, aspetto il temporale, aspetto che questo caldo arrivi alla fine, non riesco a dormire, aspetto qui, aspetto.
Love that. And I had this flowing right into a song from Duran Duran in their later career called Falling Down. Love it. And that one goes right into a Michael Franti Spearhead song called Never Too Late, which I believe I've played on the podcast. Yeah, I love just driving along with these songs. And I have talked about this on the podcast before, but I made a bunch of mixes, I think 60 to 70 of these mixes dating back to my college days in the 90s, called Hyperactive Music from Hell, where I played various sorts of metal, hip-hop, ska, punk, alternative type of music. Those ones I just had a blast. All of my CDs are scratched up, so I've been making the MP3 CDs that I've been playing in the car recently. But yeah, one of them that I listened to the other day, I had two songs back to back that I thought would be kind of fun to play here. One by a band called Caius, a song called Asteroid. That goes into the Japanese band Pizzicato 5 in Twiggy Twiggy versus James Bond. Love these types of transitions, and I believe that one goes right into a song from Carcass, death metal. Love that, and I've got just a ton of those to go through. So closing out this episode, I wanted to focus on a few songs that talk about the transition of life to death. There is a sample at the beginning of a Fear Factory song called Final Exit that seemed to match the topic.
It's quite an experience to hold the hand of someone as they move from living to dead.
Final Exit.
The rest of the song gets a lot more aggressive, but I thought I would play the sample here. So with episode 194, I talked about Filia Iar and Futhork from Heilung. I did want to mention, if you are interested, please check out the podcast website. I just posted a blog there about the Old English rune poem that was featured in the song Futhork. For this one, I'm going to be focusing on the Filia Iar part of the song, and the last stanza of Futhork is on the rune Iar, which means grave. From my CD digibook that I had mentioned previously, they have liner notes for the song, and it says, right before the recordings for the vocals for Filia Iar, a fellow dear musician passed away from this existence. Despite our plans, we decided to continue the recordings and create the piece around the death rune, feeding the sorrow to the sound. Originally, the song was supposed to be about the guardian spirits that help one in and out of this life and protect in the meantime. They are most active in extreme situations and crisis, so we decided to keep the original title. And I have talked about this piece on several episodes of the podcast. This is one that I use for meditation, and hearing that the vocals are around the death rune Iar and the guiding force called Philia, which usually is kind of like a spirit animal that comes in dreams and things like that. It was very interesting. I'm going to be putting in the show notes for this episode a link to the live performance that I'm going to be playing, plus another video that has a great explanation on the translation of the various stanzas in the piece. For Philia Iar, Kai ends up singing a translation into German from the original Anglo-Saxon or Old English. Maria sings the Old English. In the video and the book that I have on runes, there's a translation. The grave is loathsome to every noble. When soon the flesh begins, the corpse to cool, to choose the earth, pale for its bed. The fruits fall, joys pass away, men fail. And there's a different translation for the Vera Gesikau part, like all bonds break away or something like that. But I did want to have the juxtaposition of the German, what Kai sings in the beginning. And he's singing this along with Jonas Lorenzen from Nabala.
Bleibt Ekel jedem Edeling, wenn faulendes Fleisch sich kehrt, unklar, grausam kühlen, fahren die Gaben hin, verfaulen Gaben, Freude bricht, fort Verträge brechen, da bleibt Ekel jedem Edeling, wenn faulendes Fleisch sich kehrt, unklar, grausam kühlen, fahren die Gaben hin, verfaulen Gaben, Freude bricht, fort.
And that juxtaposed to Maria singing the Old English in the middle and at the end of this live performance. I have the lyrics for this stanza on the blog post. From there, it transitions into Futhork, and Kai is doing a reading of the bones ritual on the front of the stage, while Maria is holding antlers and creating the shapes of the runes with her body and the antlers. For the Lifa performance, it is much shorter than the studio version. It does not have the entire 29 stanzas, but they do still end on the Iar rune stanza at the very end. And so this is Kai singing the exact same lyrics in Old English that Maria was just singing. For the live performance, Maria comes back in with those lyrics, singing along with Jonas. Such an incredible piece of music, and I do hope to see them play it live sometime. I know they brought it back into their set for a few performances, And I will say that the piece that I use for meditation, the studio version, Kai is much more at a whisper than the rough voice that he has in this, but he still does get intense for that last stanza. But yeah, love it. Although I played Vardruna's song Helvegen live with Aurora on episode 23, I thought it was fitting for this topic as well. The song is about the ancient Norse path between the living world and the realm of the dead. The song is a profound lament about mortality, acceptance, and the spiritual journey of crossing over. Some of you may have heard it on the TV show Vikings, although on episode 23 I played the live version with Aurora. On the playlist, I put the studio version. A few years ago, they put out a live album called First Flight of the White Raven, and this comes from that. So here is Vardruna with the song Helvegen. Such an incredible tune. I've seen them live twice, and this song still brings me to tears. Just so filled with emotion. Lastly, Nathan and I talked about the artwork of Alex Grey, and I will be doing a blog post with some of his artwork. His piece Net of Being, which I talked about really wanting a tattoo of, that became the cover of Tool's 10,000 Days album. The song Wings for Marie Part 1 and its second part, 10,000 Days, Wings Part 2, serve as a musical tribute to Maynard's mother, Judith Marie, who suffered from a debilitating stroke and brain aneurysm when he was 11 years old. The medical event left her paralyzed and wheelchair-bound for roughly 27 years, which is about 10,000 days. I know that I've played both parts on various episodes of the podcast, but I did want to play the end of part 1 here as a way of letting go. Both part 1 and part 2 are just stellar pieces of music, and they've only played it live a few times because of the emotions that it brings up for Maynard. He has a hard time getting through it, singing it live. But yeah, love it. With that, I'm going to close out this episode. This one is a lot longer than I had anticipated. I had a mental map of where I wanted to go at the end of this episode and did not realize how many musical samples that I wanted to play until I started doing the post-production work on this. So there has been a delay in getting out this episode. I've also had a lot of stuff emotionally going on with my family, so that has been taking my time away from working on the podcast. But back to it and getting this episode out, I do have episodes 196 through 199 all lined up. And so that leaves episode 200, which I want to do a group discussion celebrating 200 episodes of the podcast. I have posted a blog on the website that mentions it, and I will be posting a further one with the actual date and recording link if anyone is interested in joining. I haven't set that up so far. I have mentioned a couple of times the other blogs that I've done. I did one that went along with episode 193 and the Heilung CD digibooks and some of the lyrics from Hakkerskalder. The one that I had mentioned in this episode that went along with episode 194, talking about the Old English rune poem and the original Old English and the modern English comparison. It's just, yeah, I've been such a geek for that type of stuff. I follow a lot of etymology channels on YouTube and have books on language and writing. And so, yeah, it's just a fascination of mine. And then, like I had mentioned, for this episode, I'm going to be putting out a blog post that goes along with this and the artwork of Alex Gray. So check out sexaddictsrecoverypod.com for those. And if you wanted to leave any feedback for the podcast, any music that you want to share that's part of your recovery journey, like Nathan and I's playlist here, or if you had feedback about any specific episodes, you can reach us at feedback@sexaddictsrecoverypod.com. If you wanted to get a hold of me personally, if you want to be a future guest on the podcast or have any questions about the podcast or program of SAA, you can reach me at jason@sexaddictsrecoverypod.com. So with that, I am so thankful for everyone who tuned into this episode. And as always, keep coming back. The views and opinions contained in the Sex Addicts Recovery Podcast are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of the Bay Area Intergroup or the ISO of SAA.